A big turning point for me was to realize that emotions in business is like, business suicide. If you want to self destruct, if you want to completely set yourself back from growth, from networking opportunities, from bringing real value and impact to not just yourself, but your family and your organization, you're going to stay living in your emotions, right?
Hi, I'm Andrew Brown. You're listening to the Lost Art of the Skilled Trades podcast, a show that shines the spotlight on careers in the skilled trades that are high-paying, honorable, rewarding, and fulfilling. The trades are the backbone of the economy that keep us running, and without them, our world would cease to exist. Today, we have a special guest, Trenton Wisecup, owner of Arrow Roofing Services. Welcome, Trenton, to the show.
Thank you, Andrew, for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Likewise. So I was thinking about roofing for a quick moment, and then I started thinking about when I was buying my house. So I have a house from 1958, and I bought it about 8 years ago. And I remember walking around with the inspector, and the inspector was pointing things out, and all of a sudden he points at the roof. He's like, "You have a 30-year timberline roof, and it's almost end of life." So I kept like a mental note, like, okay, that's going to be X amount of thousands of dollars. I know I need to do a green kitchen. So I was like adding things up in my head. I went to go look at the roof recently, and there is moss all over the roof in like shady areas. My question is, how many people, or just the general public, know they have a roof problem until they have a roof problem like a leak?
Yeah, I would say 90% of them don't think they have a roof problem until water's coming in the house, right? Yeah. Normally it's not a 911 until you start to see that water on the ceiling and starting to, compromise the inside of the house. That's normally like the big red flag that gets people to kind of take action and say, hey, is something going on with the roof here? I should probably get it looked at a little closer.
It's funny, you try to be proactive with things, and these are like reactive problems because usually the general public doesn't know. Even looking at the roof, you might see a couple areas, or again, when it's leaking, it's almost like it's too late. And then you're making the call to a service provider. And I assume at that point, that's what most of the calls, is that what's coming in at that point? Like something's leaking? Would that be a good percentage of the calls that are coming in for you?
Yeah, a lot of the inbound leads that we get are people that are aware that they need a roof, and it is most times going to be because they have water coming in the house, or they're getting ready to move and they want to make sure that everything's on the up and up before the inspections and things take place. But normally when they're calling, it's because the water is falling.
For you, typically, when do those calls, is it throughout the year? Is it a certain time frame? Is it summer? Do people wait and do this, later on at a different season, or it's just throughout the year?
It's kind of different every year. I would say that you do see, historically, you see a lot of calls coming in the spring, right? The snow's starting to melt here in Michigan. It's starting to get warm enough where people are starting to care a little bit more again. The vitamin D's coming through the windows. They're feeling like a human again. It's like, hey, we need to get this checked out and looked at. But we run, door knocking teams, and we're really proactive in our communities and in the territories that we work. So we are like actively engaging our clients throughout the whole year. We qualify our customers. I mean, if you got 2 years left, one, maybe 3 years max, you are in the market to start looking what that pricing looks like. We run like free 25-point inspections. We call them roof condition reports. That's simply what they are. They're just roof condition reports. And we do them for free. And it helps us analyze, the condition of the roof, bring clarity to the client live time. And then all of a sudden they think they didn't have an issue, but, we found exposed nails or the shingles decayed in a weird way. And we got water drip, 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 and they've not seen it yet because it's being absorbed by the roof deck or the insulation. And, so just being competent and having guys that can go out and qualify these deals appropriately throughout the year. We don't rely just on the consumer to call us and say, hey, Arrow Roofing, we have a problem. We are very proactive to go out and generate leads and just, help educate the community and get them clarity on the conditions of their own roofs.
Now, do you actively go around in certain neighborhoods to take a look at people's roofs? Because you said that, yes, people will call, but if I don't know there's a problem, but somebody who is scouting sort of the neighborhood and says, that roof, and that roof, there's an issue with them. Are you being proactive in that sense? You are sort of banging on the person's door or knocking on the person's door or even calling to let them know, hey, you're almost at end of life and you should be thinking about possibly replacing your roof. Are you that proactive?
Yeah, I mean, we're super proactive. So, we've been in business. This is our 8th year. And so we've worked extensively in our state. We go back and we revisit the neighborhoods. We call it groundwork. And so there might be 200 homes in this neighborhood, but when we actually drive through it, maybe only 43 of them qualify for an actual replacement, just due to like age and condition and the symptoms, if you will, that you can see from the ground. And so those are the people that we go and we pick on and we educate them, right? And so out of those 43 that are qualified, you'll probably get, 20 to 30% of those people to convert because it's time to actually do it. So we're not like targeting people or trying to convert people that have 5, 10, 15 years left in their roof, but we're really strategic in the way that we, target our avatar client. We make sure that they're qualified for our service because at the end of the day, we're going out there to serve, not to sell, but to serve them. And that's what, keeps the referrals coming and things like that. But to answer your question, that is kind of like the level of strategy that we're using to engage the client lifetime.
And you could say this for a lot of different things in your house. And most of the general public don't know that they have a problem, not even their roof, their boiler, their water heater, their AC. And when things fail, my big shtick is that I am pro skilled trades and getting the next generation into the trades, whether it's roofing, whether it's HVAC, whether it's welding, any blue collar skilled trade. I'm thinking about my own friends, my own neighborhood. Nobody knows how to do anything, like nobody, let alone screwing a light bulb. Nobody's touching anything. And we need these men and women who are helping fixing these type of issues. The people who are on your staff, the roofing experts, are you finding that there's not enough people in the trades to do this type of work? Or are you seeing good amount of people that are coming through that you could hire? Or are they even staying?
I'm very controversial. So we'll probably have people that agree with what I'm going to suggest and people that won't. But, I think that's a nice big excuse, right? Like, oh, nobody wants to do the trades. You can't hire any good workers. I think it's a really easy way to like point the finger and let yourself out as a leader from getting more intentional on your leadership and how to cultivate, the culture in a business or an organization that attracts people that to come and work there. So, what I've seen is like we had over 1,000 applications to be a door knocker last summer. So like that tells you that people are wanting to get into something where they can bring impact, be valued, and make money. And I think that a lot of old roofing styles of leadership and business models, they lack the clarity behind the vision, the goals, and then like ramp up trainings, onboardings, actually, recruiting funnels and programs that help your reps get wins early in their career that helps drive retention. Now, what we do is hard. It's high ticket. Not everyone can do it. So there's attrition, right? It's business. It's all numbers game. Same way with sales, same way with recruiting. So a lot of people are so focused on selling that they don't recruit hard enough. And they don't want to recruit hard enough because it's really hard to recruit effectively and then build a training or a ramp up program that ensures that the rep will find success within, 60, 90 days, whatever your guys' program is. We've grown. I mean, we've only scaled. There's different areas of growth. It's not always revenue, right? It took us several years to learn how to build a company culture and a recruiting program that can be like married with one another to capture the young talent, right? So all the guys that work out in the field for us are anywhere from like 19 to like 25 years old, and they're grinders. And you see the same thing in the solar industry. You got these 20-year-olds that are driving Lambos and that are making all this money. They're not scared to go out and knock. They're not scared of the trades. They're not scared to go out and have those hard, uncomfortable conversations at the door and these different things that a lot of tradespeople, because of old ideals, they won't adopt. So you're seeing, because of the lack of adoption of technology, the lack of adoption of, new business and more like modern business acumen, because sales has changed, roofing has changed, the client has changed. And so I think that a lot of people can't retain or find help because they've been running their business the same way for 15, 20, 10 years, and they've never, had that evolution and caught up to the time.
There's somebody I was thinking about who I had in the podcast last year. His name is Melvin. He's in Iowa. He's like a well-known roofer, and he knocks on doors. I mean, basically, that's what he does. But he also knows a lot about roofing and can work on roofs. And people who are hungry, they want to make money, and there's a good sales cycle here, and there's good training, there's good retention, and they see that leadership has a vision of where the company is going. As you said, that it's grown over the 8-year period. But more so, I understand the sales side, but more so the people doing the work on the roof itself. Are they people who you work with, or is it subbed out in that sense? And if it's subbed out, do you have issues finding those people to actually do the work? Not the knockers, but more so the people on the roof.
We can go pretty deep with this. I don't know how deep you want to go, so put the guardrail on me, Andrew, when it's time. Here's the thing is, if you want to be a roofer at scale, you got to sub them out. It's just the only way. If you're small, local, you stick to like just owning your backyard, having your own internal crews can be like incredibly beneficial. So I'm not like against having in-house crews, but in my experience, to do anything at a level of volume and keep the quality really high, you have to build relationships with really powerful professional subs, because now I'm not recruiting the labor. I'm recruiting the best leader, the best sub, contractor that has the relationships that he can leverage to get the best quality contractor on my job. So what I focus on is paying the guys and paying them above standard. So, running incentives, right? Like we have company and then, individual incentives per department for go backs. So if they don't go back X amount of times a month, they get a reward. Like you got to have all these, we call them accelerators. Like there's got to be accelerators. There's got to be something involved in the game plan that helps even the crews feel like they're winning. So like for me, we've never had an issue of not being able to get a roof on, not having quality contractors. Now, there is, a lot of people are using Latinos. Some people use, white crews and mixed racial crews. When we first started out, we used just, non-Latino crews, let's call them, just for like communication purposes. Like, hey, this might be easier. I was the only one that could speak a baby bit of Spanish, so I just wanted it to be smooth overall for the whole team. We had weird experiences, where, they're kind of more like jailbirds, right? It's a different culture. They got their shirts off. They're covered in tattoos. Not that I care about any of that, but customers do. When you're cussing from the roof and playing your rock and roll and you can hear it down the street and they're smoking weed on the job or doing something stupid, like at the end of the day, like that's not okay. And so when we converted early on in our career to the Latino crews, all of that went away. And the communication was actually way better. They were showing up on time to the job. They were cleaning the job, leaving on time, not calling me, giving me their baby mama drama. And my stepdad needed money for gas. And I need a front on today's job because it's just like, dude, that's not how it works. Right. So I think that a lot of people are either not training those guys, not cultivating leaders within their internal teams, or just not taking that chance, even with like communication barriers, to build those relationships with the people that are working the hardest in the space and really going above and beyond on the jobs and have the ability to recruit at high quantities of people. We can have anywhere from 8 people on a job to 20 people on a job. We can promise a certain amount of squares because of our relationships with our crews. And then the crews are all certified through manufacturer. So, the crews that we're using are certified through the manufacturer. So like they only put on our material. They're not putting on IKO, GAF, Owens Corning, and dealing with all these different, specs, and this is different and this is different. It's the same consistent, roofing systems that they install. So
It's good to hear from obviously what you're seeing out there. And, I get sort of mixed responses in that for different trades, there are shortages. So, for me, I was only trying to pinpoint, are you seeing shortages in the trades that people don't want to? There's one thing about people not showing up for work, and that's a quality issue, but more so that there's not enough people to actually do the work. But it doesn't sound like that's really the case. There's a good amount of people, especially if a contractor has a good crew of people. They're reliable, they show up, do good work, they say what they're going to do. You're always going to run into an issue with certain people. And that's just possibly not people you want to work with moving forward after that job is over. I do want to shift a little bit of focus more so of the business aspect, because what the audience or my audience would get most good information from is people who are in the field. So if you are a roofer, if you are a welder, if you are an electrician, let's say you want to make that shift from in the field to business owner, because I feel that myself, I'm a business owner. I own a company called Toolfetch, an industrial supply company. We carry over 2 million products from 650 different vendors, and we've scaled the business out over a 24-year period. So I understand the whole aspect of entrepreneurship, but a lot of people don't. What does it take to go from someone who's in the field, who's got that technical skills, to someone who wants to be a business owner? What do you need? What kind of qualities do you need?
yeah, it's a great question. There's a book out there called The E-Myth. Anybody that's looking to do that conversion from, being a rep to going straight to owner, for a lot of people, it's really romantic. It's romantic. It's sexy. It's fun. It's the dream. It's what you want to do. But at the end of the day, a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of people at the top, they're not getting credit for the amount of energy and time that's being committed and sacrificed that nobody sees. One thing I would say to encourage somebody that's looking to do that is you have to be willing to be in it for like the long-term play, right? Like you're not going to get immediate results. And with that being said, nobody's going to tell you good job. Nobody cares. And so you don't need to care either. You just need to keep your chin down and keep pushing through. So, a couple of characteristics are you're going to have to be mega resilient. Can't be soft. You're going to lose money. You're going to lose friends. You're going to lose relationships with clients. I mean, it's just part of it, right? And so you got to be really resilient and you have to be brave. So a lot of entrepreneurs are actually scared all the time. We're walking around like, oh my gosh, is this going to work? Is that going to work? But people look at us and they think that we're brave because even though we're terrified, we continue to push the limit and to try it. It's like, oh, this is kind of scary, but let's see what happens. Where other people aren't willing to swallow or digest that level of risk. So, making sure that you have a resilient mindset, that you aren't looking for anybody to co-sign you or to pat you on the back, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. And then the other thing is you need to pay to play, because you're just a rep at that point. You may think you're sweet. You may think you're the top sales guy. I'm the best installer. I could run my own crew. I can have my own business. Again, that's really romantic. But at the end of the day, you need to pay to play and pay for a mentor or get in some type of mastermind group or attend some conferences that allow you to rub shoulders with people that can give you a heightened insight on what you're about to walk into. And so, those are just a couple quick qualities, Andrew.
You mentioned E-Myth, and I read E-Myth a handful of years ago, and I was like, shit, that sort of describes a little bit about me. It was an eye opener for me, and just a lot of it made sense. But I didn't go down the E-Myth road. I went down EOS, Entrepreneur Operating System. I don't know if you know what that is, but it's similar to E-Myth. It's a blueprint for your business, how to communicate, how to have meetings, how to have goals, visions, and break it down from a 3-year goal to a 90-day goal to a 1-year goal, that type of stuff. And that really helped our business kind of propel forward, have quarterly meetings, have yearly meetings, and really have a structure in the business. If we ever want to sell the business, that the business basically runs itself. It's not on me. It's not on my partner. The business, basically, if we left for like a week, 2 weeks, the business would be stronger. So you do need a structure, especially if you want to scale up your business and you want to get to 10, 20, 30 million plus. It requires you not to do everything. It requires you to delegate certain things. It requires you to have mentors. Like you said, I have mentors myself, and that took a very long time for me to actually get there. Also, masterminds. And for me, I am a part of a CEO group called Vistage, where I meet with other CEOs monthly. And literally, I get my head handed to me every month in a good way, because that's how I grow. And that's how I get uncomfortable with being comfortable. So it's always interesting to hear somebody who is entrepreneurial. And I always call entrepreneur, we're weird. And I'm saying this in a good way. Entrepreneurs are built differently. There's something about that grit, the hustle. You could knock me to the ground, I'll get back up, right? You drag me through the mud, I'll clean myself off. There's something about being an entrepreneur, and I don't think everybody has those qualities.
I completely agree. You either got it or you do not got it. Cannot be trained. I mean, you can learn and you can grow, but you're just born as a savage or not, you know? And it really just comes down to that simplicity of it. You either want it or you just talk about wanting it. You either go get it. See, here's the biggest thing is a lot of these business owners, whether we're talking about recruiting, whether we're talking about reps wanting to become an owner, think of how much action you need to take to do it and then times that by 5. And so it needs to be this like massive level of action. And they can be micro and they can be large, right? But what they do is they compound, they add up to be this massive amount of action that you've taken after one goal, after learning one trade, after learning one aspect of the business. When you do that, that's what helps you get through that learning curve quicker. And I see a lot of people, they think they're working hard, they think they're taking action, but you've never learned how to work. You don't know what it looks like to put in the hours. You don't know what it looks like to stay up late. You don't know what it looks like to wake up early. What it looks like to make 200 dials, knock 500 doors, put on 600 roofs, whatever it may be. Taking that massive action is really important.
It is. And there's always things that can happen in your business that somebody leaves, somebody gets sick, there's a change in the administration, they make a change, and all of a sudden your business, snap of the finger, it's changed and the game has changed and you need to evolve and think on your feet. As a business owner, have you ever been in a situation where it was like, I had that oh shit moment, like we need to change things, this is not working and we need to try anything else? Has that happened to you at any moment in time? And what did you have to do to get back on track?
Yeah, only like millions of times. I mean, it happens all the time. I mean, us as leaders, we put together these playbooks. It should go just like this on paper. It works out. The math makes sense. Everything makes sense. And then none of it, and then none of it works or none of it, goes the way that we want. So early on, for example, in our career, the very first year, we sold 6 roofs and we put the roofs on ourselves. So it was like me and some buddies. I was the only like real roofer. And so I'm like overseeing and selling and doing this and doing that. And I realized really quickly that you can never make money selling and installing them. Cause I was like, oh, I'll just double dip. I'll sell it and I'll build it. And then I was like, this sucks. This will never work. I want to buy my time. Okay. I'm not trying to break my back and do everything. I want to buy my time. So I utilized my communication skills and my sales skills to start recruiting crews. So I would like drive around. I would look in the market and see who was putting on the nicest roofs. When I saw them installing, dude, I would poach. I'd whip up there, start talking to them in Spanish, see if they want more work, blah, blah, blah. Next thing you know, we pay them a little bit more, treat them a little bit better. And I've had the same crews now 5 years, 6 years. That's really kind of one of those things where, oh yeah, I'll double dip. I'll make more money, do more work, when realistically it wasn't that at all. It limited my time to go out and sell more. It limited my energy and my ability to like maximize my energy towards what I was doing, right? So that was kind of like a plan that didn't work, and I'm glad it didn't work. And so we put in a new plan that, hey, we need crews, and then that worked, right? So that's a very simple early example.
When you're the jack of all trades, you're master of none. It's just you're working on too much in the business. And I get it. You feel that you can do everything. In essence, it holds you back. You can't install and you can't sell together. You need to pick a lane and stay in it. But it's good that you figured that out early on and made that shift, because if you've scaled the business over a course of 7, 8 years, you're in that mindset where you need to be to scale a business. For a lot of small businesses out there, especially guys, or women running HVAC companies or plumbing companies, a lot of them are doing the work and also the sales side. I've had people come here. It's just like a couple of people who do the work, and they got to ride around, on a Tuesday, losing time from actually working on a job because they have to sell as well. And I've seen that to some degree. It's almost a blueprint for getting burnt out. At some point, you get burnt out. It's only so many hours that you can put into doing both of that. And I assumed you learned that really early on in your career. You need to figure that out, whether that's a mentor telling you or you just kind of literally figure it out on your own, which it sounds like you did figure it out.
And the reason why that happens to people is because their egos are so freaking big. So they think they know everything. They don't want to change anything. They limit themselves through their belief system. So they have a limited belief. And what it does is it traps them because they're so egotistical. Oh, look at me. Oh, look what I've done. Oh, I can't find anybody. These people, they're not willing to recruit and humble up, let go of those egos in order to grow.
I wanted to shift over to, this is more so of just feedback that I get. When you call certain companies and certain roofing companies and services, it's very hard to get a price, meaning that they have to come down, they have to estimate it. I don't know if you know Grant Cardone, a very kind of well-known sort of guy on social media, and he does sales, he does marketing. I was at one of his conferences, and he was literally calling roofing companies at the show. There was like 500 of us, and he's calling somebody's company. All he wanted to do was ask for pricing. Like, what's the price? They said, no, I can't give you the price. We'll have to get back to you. And he was saying that what I would do is I would just move on to the next company. Is that something that when it comes to services like that, can you really quote a price over the phone, or is it you really have to go out there to see sort of the square footage and what the work is?
I like Grant, by the way. He's a phenomenal marketer, phenomenal sales guy. So he can twist our brains up into a pretzel if he wants. And, oh, these companies aren't doing this. Look how much money they're missing out on, blah, blah, blah. Right. So I guess there's two ways of looking at it. If you look at it Grant's way, oh, they're not giving pricing. Again, two ways of looking at it. One, you could give pricing as long as the expectation is set appropriately that, hey, there's going to be adders because we're not there. We don't know what's under the roof. So, hey, here's a price and it could go up. We just want to let you know. So there's one way of handling it. The other way of thinking of it is, no roof is created equal. You're a contractor that wants to give them the accurate pricing and set expectations clearly one time up front and go the extra mile to inspect it, to set yourself apart from the competition locally because you got in the attic. And this other guy, I called him, he just sent me an estimate, but you're wanting to get my attic. Why is that? So there's a second way of looking at it is, hey, well, one, we don't want to waste our time. We don't want window shoppers. So we want to make sure that we're going out, getting those multiple touches, building that rapport and the trust through the level of competency and the level of engagement and intentionality that we bring to the inspection to make sure that we're doing it right the first time. It all makes money. It all works. So just, which one do you prefer?
And I totally get about having to go out there and see if there's other issues out there. And then obviously a face-to-face being there, like you said, it's not somebody who's just kind of making phone calls and I don't want to say it's a waste of time, but it takes up a lot of time. And you want to make sure that that person is really serious about maybe doing the roof or doing some type of service. And hear that from a lot of people who are in the trades. It's like, okay, somebody's interested in us coming down, but then it's not serious. And I completely understand that you don't want to completely just kind of waste these type of hours. So you got to know that the person who's interested in this type of work really wants to actually do it. So I completely understand there. You were talking about, before we got on the show, we were dealing some technical issues and you had pulled up Chat GPT on something. How have you seen the industry change in roofing with AI, and how are you using AI in your business today?
We're using AI in 4 different ways in our business right now. So one way that we're using it is for lead generation, B2B communication and engagement. So like, now the AIs can send 80,000 emails a month. They can do 20,000 calls a month. You can script them out. They're always learning. You get to change the voices. You get to pick all these unique characteristics behind the agents. So, we use it for that, right? Because it's able to do way more volume for a way more affordable price. And we've been able to capture more commercial leads in a freaking 90-day window than we'd have our whole time being in business. And it's because it's a numbers game, and having the tools that can go out and get those numbers that you just are limited because you're human, or you don't have enough hiring power or enough cash flow to sustain a big team, whatever it may be. Another way that we're using it is through analyzing our sales meetings. So when we have our meetings, they're being recorded by AI. And at the end of that, it's transcribing a summary and giving our sales team lifetime pointers on why they lost the deal, how they could have won the deal, where in the deal that they lost the sale, where they could have advanced, where they could have asked more strategic and qualifying questions. It's kind of like a game film, if you will, for salespeople. So like these top athletes, the reason why they're able to go out and make this impact on the court is because they're able to watch their film. They're able to review their technique. And at the end of the day, that's what our job is as leaders and as roofers. Like, we are sales organizations. Yes, we put on roofs, but at the end of the day, if you can't communicate and get the lead in the funnel, then you're not serving your community. It doesn't matter if you're the best technical roofer that's ever walked the earth. If you don't have the communication skills and technology implemented to help you learn at a faster rate, because there's young people out there that are using AI, and now we're learning at like, a very rapid, accelerated pace compared to anyone before us historically, right? So, that's just two ways that we're using it. But as fast as it's hitting the market, we are reviewing those things. We're doing research on it. Hey, how do we use this? Can it actually help us? Is this a scam? Is this a huge resource? I think a lot of people are lazy to do the research. They're lazy. They're old dogs trying to learn new tricks. They're lazy to exercise their brain muscle and like get on the computer and work out a technical difficulty or figure out a new system or new software. People are terrified of that. And it's just stupid. It's so beneficial and it helps so much that if you could get through that limiting belief or that procrastination or whatever that is that's stopping you, technology could help you cut your team in half, cut your overhead in half, and add your bottom dollar at the end of the day. So that's just how we're using, or some of the ways that we're using AI currently.
AI has been a game changer. And ever since really ChatGPT came out, I've been all over it, from deep research to Claude, whatever it may be, video editing, highly like engaged using it day in, day out. Where, I mean, I use Google, but people are more so going to ChatGPT and having a conversation, and it can give you an unbiased sort of feedback in real time. And obviously you got to give it the right inputs, from doing your social media to, like you said, it's diagnosing your meeting to see how the pulse went, to doing interviews and feeding in the transcript and basing it upon, does this person meet a criteria of the job description, and does this person meet a personality from a disc assessment. There's a ton of things that you can do, but it's cut so much time. When I use Copilot or it's ChatGPT or any of these type of softwares, to some degree, I almost feel like I don't have to understand it. ChatGPT does. And I feel like I get lost a little bit in a sense, like some of these things you need to know, but you're almost so reliant on the technology. But that's just kind of where it's going. If businesses do not take advantage of AI, they're going to be passed by, especially with, like you said, the younger generation who's just using it already. The older generation who's still using Google is on Facebook, just like not really on the cusp of where technology is. You kind of get passed by.
I completely agree. It's like being in the gym. You want to stay healthy everywhere, right? So there's new techniques, there's new technology, there's new ways of doing things all the time. I mean, we live in a world of infinite leverage, and people will still come on this podcast and give you excuses on why they're not hitting and smashing their income goals and their scaling and growth goals, right? So at the end of the day, there's people out there doing it. And if you really want it, you'll go do it as well.
A lot of time, the biggest limiting factor is yourself. You just need to look in that mirror and, tell that person, shut up, I can do it, and all about a mindset.
Now, the tools of the trade.
Trenton, this has been an amazing conversation, but in every episode, we always ask our guest a tools of the trade. What's one key lesson, or what was a mindset that really kind of like took you to that next level that you can share with the audience?
Yeah, I think a big turning point for me was to realize that emotions in business is like, business suicide. If you want to self destruct, if you want to completely set yourself back from growth, from networking opportunities, from bringing real value and impact to not just yourself, but your family and your organization, you're going to stay living in your emotions, right? So, one thing that my dad taught me at a young age that really started to shape itself in my professional life was my dad would teach me in between glad and sad is a neutral zone. And that neutral zone is called business. And so you have to understand that when you are conducting business, it's simply just that. I think that a lot of people get really emotional because they take things very, very personally. I know I did. Every time that something didn't go right, it was a personal attack on me and I'm not doing good enough and look how hard I'm working. It's elementary level leadership skills and elementary level entrepreneurship education. So unless you can really identify that, hey, none of it's personal, and hey, I don't need to act out of my emotions. My job's just to be objective and factual. Because a lot of times when the customer, when the rep is complaining, maybe they're right. Maybe they're right. Maybe you need to change something. Maybe something needs to get tweaked. Maybe they have something. So I would say getting out of my emotions and then being really, really open and encouraging feedback from your team in a spirit of collaboration. That excelled our business because it was no longer me at the chalkboard coming up with this great business plan and rolling it out to the team. It's like, okay, I'm going to come up with this great plan and now I'm going to bring it to my great team and I'm going to have everybody poke holes in it, give feedback. This is awesome. Hey, Trenton, this completely sucks. Like being humble enough and not emotional to, because you're not hurting anybody's feelings. You need to be open to getting and encouraging that feedback. And then when you do that, it helps the team have ownership over the process and they feel heard and they feel valued and they want to stay and they want to contribute and they want to see that vision come to life, right? So I would say those two things. One, realizing that there is a neutral zone that you can mentally travel to that's called business, where there's no emotions in it at all. And that is like a key, it's like a wizard move. It's almost like magic when you go there because you're bulletproof. So when you're going to that confrontational conversation that you're firing somebody, terminating a rep, maybe you're trying to collect a big check from a customer, guys, when they're, vomiting and puking and showing all that emotion, you're able to just be in that neutral zone and listen really, really well, and then come with a solution, like an objective plan, right? And when you do that, it really affects that dialogue and that interaction. And then number two, again, just being open and encouraging feedback and having that spirit of collaboration on your team, because that, my friend, will get them to buy in more, get them to take ownership to where you're not responsible to think for 50 people. Now 50 people are thinking for 50 people. That brain power is a lot stronger. Those would be my two pieces of advice.
And I love the emotional piece because, especially when you're just starting out, I mean, I started out when I was 22, 23. I'm a very different person years later. And that took time to build those skills where maybe when I was younger, I would react first, then think. Now it's think, then react. And that just took time. That took maturity. That took speaking to other people. It is hard sometimes to disconnect and, to some degree, yes, the emotions are still there, but you're able to control it in a way that even if you're speaking to a customer and they're yelling at you, or it's an employee and you have to terminate them, sometimes you got to do what you got to do. And being at the top and being CEO, being president, being owner, that's not an easy job. It really isn't. And that just takes time in the seat. No one can really teach you that until you kind of go through that and you have experience. one book that really helped me was The Gap and the Gain. And this book kind of like shifted my mindset in a sense that sometimes you're in the gap, you're in really bad headspace, and it gives you tips of how to get out of that funk and look at the good side. It was a book that really helped me a lot. But I do think talking to people, being in a leadership or business group of some sort, speaking with other people in different industries, and just being open and honest that you don't know everything. And I always say it's the things you don't know that hurt you. Get around other people with positive mindsets, and that's going to really take you to the next level. If people want to find out more about you, Trenton, social media, website, where do they go?
Yep. So you can check me out on IG at Trenton.Wisecup. I'd love to connect with any of your followers or any of the fans here on this podcast if they'd like to learn a little bit more about some of our sales approaches, some of our leadership approaches and things like that. And then also I have a consulting business. It's called Empower Me Consulting, and you can find it at empowermeconsulting.com. And then also my personal website, TrentonWisecup.com. So you can reach me on any of those three spots, and love to connect with anybody that has the time to do so.
Trenton, it's been great to having you on the show, and thank you for all your input. Definitely good value to the audience today. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me on, Mr. Brown, and we'll talk to you later, my friend.
And thank you to our listeners. If you want more valuable insights and trades-related information, head over to andrewbrown.net and join our Trades Movement newsletter, where we advocate for the trades, share inspirational stories like Trenton. We provide resources, and you join a passionate trades community. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss another episode. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to The Lost Art of the Skilled Trades. Visit us at andrewbrown.net for more resources and tips. Join us next time for real stories and meaningful initiatives as we celebrate our men and women in the skilled trades and shape the future together.